Hey there, and welcome to Conversations Worth Your While. It's the podcast where we dig into ideas and insights that will help you to unleash what you were born to bring. I chat with heart-led experts who are already unleashing what they were born to bring, and I ask the questions that I know you're thinking about, and we explore conversations that spark growth, that shift perspectives, and that help you show up forward in every aspect of your life. And today we are talking about an amazing topic, starting over after it all falls apart, how to rebuild your life. Now, this conversation is worth your while because everyone experiences life-altering disruptions that break you. And it happens in business, it happens in life. Things like divorce, loss of a loved one, career loss, bankruptcy, there's many more. But it doesn't matter where you are or what's happened or what the collapse was. There is the ability to rebuild your life stronger than the life that broke before. And today, my guest and I will show you how. I am Linda Bucher, and if the life you're in no longer fits, this space is for you. Because through this podcast and through my coaching, I guide you to shed what no longer fits, to reconnect with your gifts, and to bring your life into alignment with who you are and what you want. And if that sparks something within you, you can find me at lindabucher.com. Okay, once again, today our conversation is about starting over after it all falls apart, how to rebuild your life. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Joe Cullen. Now, Joe is an executive facility coach. He is also the founder and director of the not-for-profit organization SIDRE and the author of the book Built for Rebuilding. And Joe is unleashing what he was born to bring and making big, beautiful ripples in the world because he helps people to rebuild their lives after major disruption in business life. So, Joe, hello. Thank you for being
Hey,
here today.
oh, well, I'm so happy to be here. Thank you for having me and thank you for building me up. Now I've got a lot to live up to in the conversation.
No, you are a man who does so much. Just rain. This is like, with all the beautiful work you do in the world, it's really hard to wrangle the kittens, get them all back in the box. So we're like, just talk about this.
Oh, wrangling kittens is perfect.
Keep all the kittens in the box. Okay. Okay. So, tell us a little bit more, if you would, about your work in the world.
Well, my work is kind of divided into two pieces. I've got kind of the for-profit world with Joe Cullen Limited, where I work with executives and senior leaders to kind of help them, rebuild or build stability in their careers. And then Cider, my nonprofit, I work through justice impacted people and helping them to rebuild their lives through business education, skills training, and those things. And all of that combined came to the book Built for Rebuilding. So, it's a ends up being a situation where I just feel like everyone deserves to have the tools to rebuild their lives, no matter where they're at. And that's kind of the driver of helping people, whether that's in the executive world or whether that's somebody whose life's collapsed completely in front of them.
Right. Well, it's very good work because, like I mentioned in my introduction, everyone goes through something that really threatens to break you or breaks you. Now, there's different levels of breakage.
Yes.
Um, for instance, when I was 44, I was 41, my husband was 44. He died in his sleep without any warning whatsoever. And
Mm,
I was left with, three tiny grieving children, like 3, 5, and 7 years old. So I'm a sudden widow, I'm a sudden single mother. Um, that, and, you know, that was a huge collapse.
yeah.
I when you're a mom, you know, it's it's hard to give yourself everything that you need in that collapse because you're caretaking as well. And
Yes.
so my level of breakage was in a certain form more of numbness than depression and laying on the floor, right? So we all experience things differently. But
Yes, we do. Yeah, it's a situation where, you were going through grief, but you had three little people that you had to lift up and carry. So you did not actually have time to work through, your core problems. You kind of did it in bits and pieces, but never fully restored the foundation until they got considerably older, and you were able to then probably look back a little bit and define what happened with you as you went through it. So
Yeah, yeah. I think my point is we all go through it through different types of breakages, and we all break a little differently.
yeah,
Um, However, I did have to rebuild. I
yeah,
had to create a new normal for my family and for myself. And that didn't happen overnight. Now, what happened to me was not something, that I caused myself. So I didn't have shame, I had grief, right? But for different people, sometimes like the marriage breaks up, then you feeling shame as well. Um, you know, so everyone goes through something a little bit different, right?
yes, they do.
But we all still need to rebuild.
At some point, we suffer something, whether it's the slow erosion of a professional career.
Mm.
People don't see that as a big collapse. Well, collapse happens sometimes in private, very quietly. Sometimes it's very loud and very public. And for me, I've had it happen both ways throughout my life. Part of the Built for Rebuilding program came from lived experience, came from my study of cognitive behavioral therapy, and from looking at human design and stoicism and the different components that go into the rebuilding process, and how those things align with who we are as a person, who we are as humans, uh, and really how those things are set to bring us into kind of that alignment of our own personal agency, our own self-worth, our own dignity. Those are kind of the three foundational elements that I've found are key to building stronger than how you broke before. And so, yeah, everybody is a little different, and it's really it comes down to kind of some brutally honest questions. And we'll talk about that as we go through today.
Okay, so so we've established that breakage is different for everyone. It could be at work, it could be loss of a career, loss of a loved one, it could be bankruptcy, it could be a divorce, it could be just a personal collapse that you have no idea where it came from or what caused it, just like all of a sudden
Yeah.
just feel wrong. And that's what happened to me about, I don't even know how many years after. Well, it was happening probably while my husband was still alive, where I was at this point where I'm like, I know my life looks great on paper, but I am gapingly unfulfilled, and I'm feeling worse and worse every day. And as I felt emotionally worse, I began to feel physically worse. And
Yeah.
I couldn't name it. There wasn't a catalyst that was like, hey, it's me, I'm going to disrupt your life. It
Yeah.
was civil, I call it civil unrest. It was something,
Yeah.
right?
That's a good way to look at it.
That counts as a big disruption. That hit me when I was 45 years old. And been a long time coming, a long
Yep.
time coming. And at 45 is when I got the courage to do something about it.
Well, and that's what we were talking about
Yeah.
before we came on air. That's kind of the executive stability part. That's where most of that comes from. Is you've spent your life building a career, building what you do, and for a lot of people, it becomes who they are,
Mhm.
and how they're seen, and how they go through the world, how they travel. And as that slowly starts falling away, where you don't, you know your decision making slows, and the opportunities that you used to get all the time are now kind of passing you by, and the people that you work with or that report to you have really kind of not backed off, but they don't come to you like they used to. And so that whole part of who you are and where you're at is collapsing. That loss of identity. And and that's what we'll talk about part of in pillar one. So
Yeah. In coaching, we take our clients through, and that's our responsibility to understand where they are in the cycle of change. And the catalyst, whether it's good or bad, whether you chose it or it just got chosen for you, doesn't matter. You get thrown in square one. And square one is the death and rebirth of your identity. And square one, it's a liminal phase. It's like you're neither here nor there. You're not where you were, but you're not where you're going to be. You feel like you're completely untethered. You have no idea what's going on. You don't know how to move forward. And it's a stripping down of your identity because you can't go backwards to who you were. And you don't know yet who you're becoming. It's the most uncomfortable place. As a coach, it's my job to know if I have a client in square one. And we've all been in square one in different parts of our lives. When we choose to get married, it's a happy catalyst that we chose, but we're still like the death of that identity as a single person. Now I'm not a person anymore, right? When we become parents, we go through this again. We go through the change cycle, and there's 4 squares in the change cycle. We go through it so many times in life, and sometimes we're in square one in one area, and in square 3 in another area, and in square 4 in another area. So we're kind of all over. But this loss of identity is such a good point, because that's the point where you've already collapsed, and now you're in this no man's untethered land, and how I can't even see where to go from here. And it's not your job to see when you're in square one. So talk a little bit more about square one, this loss of identity.
Well, when you look at our lives, there's a almost unwritten law that says your dignity, your self-worth basically empowers every decision you make. And your personal agency has got to be strong so that when you make choices, when you make decisions, whether it's that happy catalyst or whether it's the catalyst thrust upon you, if your personal identity is not strong enough to hold the weight that comes with that, you're gonna collapse. And unfortunately, like we've said, all of us face it in different levels at different times in our lives. Some have it, and we haven't even talked about where mental health issues come in as well. And for me, that was a big part of my journey. I was undiagnosed, suffering with bipolar disorder. So I I built this fabulous career, in the corporate world. I had started 3 different companies and sold them. But at the same time, while I was doing all these great things up here, I was also suffering these times of collapse, and just, I lost a couple of positions during that corporate climb because I wasn't able to function anymore. I went from being high performing and then went through the manic phase of bipolar disorder and collapsed afterwards to a depression level that I would not wish on my worst enemy. It was horrible, and I quit functioning for all practical purposes. And through those experiences, I've learned that it's that dignity, that belief in self, that love of self, that care of self that empowers that agency.
Yeah, I 100% agree. In my work, the very foundational thing that I help my clients do is to repair their sense of worthiness. Because everyone's sense of worthiness is degraded from when our child brain degraded it because we didn't understand how things really were.
Yeah.
And then because our egos are hardwired to believe to find more evidence of what we already believe to be true, we just keep collecting evidence of how we're not good enough. And then grow up to be adults who make everything mean, anything that happens, just reinforces the fact that we don't believe we're good enough. So some people, when I'll ask them, like, what percent worthy do you believe you are? And some people say 72%, and other people say 40%. Our beginning work is always to repair that sense of worthiness, because if you do not believe you are worthy of well-being, you will not pursue well-being. You will not pursue rebuilding your life.
No,
The fact
you will not.
to me, however, because that's what they want to shed what doesn't work and realign their lives and live this big, beautiful, rich, full life. The first thing I tell them is the fact that you're here tells me that there's a part of you that does you're 100% worthy. And that's why you do it.
Yep. That is so true. And it kind of leads to pillar number 2 for what Built for Rebuilding is, and that comes to basically truth and clarity. And what you just described in and I say something very similar early in the book, in the introduction, that if you're holding this book, something's happened that's made you want to figure it out. And so that second piece, after you've really worked on that dignity and identity and worthiness, is that becoming brutally honest with yourself and asking the hard questions, not with shame and not with distortion, but what was my part in this? What was my role? What really happened? What was my part in the outcome? And really figuring out, not just from a victim perspective, but from okay, I had a role in this, whether it was, and I like it was happy, or if it was thrust upon me, or whatever that situation was, there's always two sides to the coin. It's never just one side. And so getting that truth and that clarity, allows you to see honestly where you're going and what you need to do, and to really release the shame and release the despair and release the sadness, or and the emotions that go with it. And really, your self-judgment will begin to reappear and will begin to um you know redevelop in a way that takes you to that person you're becoming. And I love how you phrased it, because it's how I talk about it quite often as well, that you're no longer that person that was back there. You're not the person that collapsed. You're not the life that broke. You are you. And once that dignity's there, once that clarity's there, you can, you really then have the power and the ability and the judgment to make that next step.
Yeah. So I love that you mentioned something in your book. I love this sentence. Truth is the doorway to clarity.
Yes.
And truth is being honest with yourself, and being honest with yourself, and you alluded to it already, is you are not the victim and you are not the villain either, because both the victim makes you feel powerless and the villain makes you feel shameful. And you can't do anything in this world if you're feeling powerless or shameful, or sometimes you're feeling both at the same time. So when you accept the truth that you might just be worthy of well-being, the truth that there's, there's a light shining inside of you that just needs to be deschmutzed, because it's supposed to shine in this world.
Love that.
All we gotta do is get the schmutz off it.
That's a New Yorker girl right there. Deschmutzed.
So when you are at least willing to accept that the truth that you might just be worthy and here for something bigger than you, which is a beautiful thing.
Yes, it is.
Then you can begin to find clarity. So this is not a puzzle to be figured out. It's a discovery journey, isn't it?
Yes, it is completely a discovery journey. And, you know, the spoiler here is discovery should never end. That's, but that's the spoiler. We'll put that in a later book maybe.
Yeah.
But no, but once you get through those first kind of two elements, then you can start putting together kind of where I put pillar three. And that's kind of, the tools and the skills that you need to then rebuild. It's nothing big and fancy and overwhelming. It's simple. It's practical tools to go about daily life, to restore your confidence, to kind of build capability and capacity to move forward for where you're going. Those tools, are discovery tools. I mean, it's a lot of times, and I've seen this in my own life, but also with people I've worked with through this process, is that they get here and they thought they were going this way. And then they start really analyzing their life and looking, and I love how the bigger why, not just the why, but I love how you say the bigger why. And they realize that they're supposed to be over there. And so they have to turn and take a little bit different path than what they had initially thought they were going to do. And I know, or I don't know, but I'm fairly sure that when you went through the loss of your husband, your path went a bunch of different ways for quite a while, because you didn't do the first two levels of work because you couldn't. You weren't at a place with three small children to do it. But once you were, your path led you to the why you're on now. And, and once you were able to get there, you were able to kind of what is the next step in the journey for me, and that's structure and strategy. So
Okay. So I love that you brought that up because you are 100% right. If I hadn't experienced the loss of my husband, there's no way I would be doing the important work in the world I'm doing today. No way. Absolutely no way. And so I pose a question to people all the time. And it goes like this: what if the steps in your path had more value than where your path was supposed to take you?
yeah,
So I thought my path was going one way, but what happened along the way brought me somewhere else. But more importantly, each of those steps showed me who I am and what I'm capable of. And that's way more important than where the path was supposed to take me.
yep. I love that, and wholeheartedly concur with the conclusion. Because I know my path when I was 25 years old, before I had my first major collapse, uh, was CEO of an entertainment company. It was not to be, a executive stability coach and author, and helping people rebuild their lives, when they've come out of prison, and have the felony conviction that's following them the rest of their life. And so no, I concur with that conclusion completely. So yeah.
So I was talking about the change cycle and you're talking about your pillars, and I just love to point out where they overlap. So
Mhm.
far you mentioned the center, like there's the center pillar and then you've got four corners. So you
Yeah.
mentioned that center pillar is the dignity and identity restoration. And I mentioned that through square one, you are rediscovering your identity. And
Yeah.
I love that you're bringing in dignity, because that's what happens when you are shedding shame and shedding beliefs that do not serve or support where you're supposed to go in this world.
Yeah.
So that's what's happening there. Then one of your corners, of the four corners around that center pillar, is truth and clarity. And that is what's happening also in square one and in square two is in coaching. So where square one is death and rebirth of your identity,
Mhm.
Square two is the discovery phase. We call it dreaming and scheming. And you start not knowing what's up, but being ready for it. Like that's how
Yeah.
you square two. You're like, I think I'll cut my hair. Oh, I think I'll have to paint my wall. Like you're ready for something. You don't know what it is, but you're ready. If something's changing, right? And so I love square two because this is the discovery phase. And so we talked about how truth and clarity really helps you discover. Also in square two is where some of these, what you're talking about, these tools and skill building. When I'm coaching someone, I'm teaching life navigation skills. Always, always, because you when you have them, there are many collapses, future collapses that you will have avoided because you know
Yes.
how to navigate life and because you have restored your dignity using your words and you know your identity and you know you've restored your worthiness. Now, some of those collapses will never happen in a breaky way. Like you might still get divorced, but then you don't make it mean that you're unworthy of being loved.
That you're a failure, and that you, yeah, or your business may.
Your
Yeah.
business might go, yeah, but you don't make it mean something is wrong with you. So I like to talk about these overlaps, and that's where like the tools and skill building is happening there. Your next pillar, pillar four, let's talk about that. Structure and strategy.
Yeah, that's where, kind of the rubber meets the road, so to speak, in the rebuilding process, because you've actually done the heavy lifting when you get to this point. You've went through the identity, and like you said, we went through those different tools and squares and pillars, however you wanna frame that. And then when you look at kind of the structure and strategy, now you're trying to really limit the chaos, and re what's the word? I just lost the word. That's why I'm kind of stumbling here. But you're replacing that chaos that was the collapse with direction, with focus, with intent. And when you get to that point, you know that focus, that direction, that intent, it provides a structure to your life. And the one thing that, when I'm talking with people and working through these things, structure doesn't mean rigidity. It doesn't mean, military time of 6 a.m. the alarm goes off, 6:30 I'm in the shower. It's not that kind of structure. It's the structure of a daily operating system of for me, that's still developing, but it's, I get up in the morning and I have my two or three points, and I have kind of my word focus of the day kind of thing. That's starts me in the right position. That focus is that stoic, ability to generalize the reality of what's happening. And then the strategy is, okay, how am I going to take this now? And, yep, I had to make the pivot and go this direction. But how do I do that? What are the steps to make that happen? And that's, creating a clear plan becomes so important.
And now I want to bring up creating this clear plan is as individual as you are, right?
Yes,
Talked
absolutely.
about one of the things you like to bring in, which I love, is human design. I, when I discovered what my human design was, it was like meeting myself. Like I was like, oh yeah, exactly, totally,
Makes sense.
absolutely. Like, right? It
I'm
makes
a generator. I get
like
it.
I'm a projector. Projectors
Ah,
are guides for generators and manifesting generators. That's who we're
yes,
supposed to guide in the world. The people who are
yes,
the doers, and we are not the doers, we are the guides. Um,
yes.
and I am I'm exactly what I'm supposed to be doing as the guide. I'm a guide, I'm a coach, I'm a guide.
There you go. Yeah, that was what was weird with mine, because when you go through the process, I kind of come off manifesting generator. That's where I fall in. And was it 3 and 5? I think I can't remember what the exact numbers are, but yet I have that guiding sense of determination and drive. And that's where you take human design, and when you add in a little bit of the CBT and the stoicism, it really creates this funneled picture of of completely who you are and where you're going. And so, yeah, no, that's, yeah.
It's a really important thing to know, because when you know who you are, you give yourself permission to not have to be who you're not.
Yeah.
And that's if you only get one thing out of every assessment you ever take or your human design, it's the fact that you can let go of not having to be who you're not.
Yeah.
So
You're not your Meyer-Briggs score.
no, you are not. And also because things on like assessments, like you're on a continuum, you can only be here, or here. You can't be in two places on the same continuum. And
Yeah.
so, like on the Colby index, I'm a quick start. Quick start's like, how hard could it be? Let's just start today. We're just gonna figure it out as we go, right? Someone who is very high on the analysis side of that I think that's what's on the other end of that particular continuum, is
I
going
think I'm married to her. Yeah.
to do a lot of research and take it real slow. Now, I'm not
Yeah.
there any quicker because I'm going by trial and error like 2,000 times before I get there, because I gotta let me just do it. I can do it. I figure
It
it out.
drives her nuts.
Right. And then but the analysis people don't get there quicker because they have to keep analyzing. They can get analysis paralysis, right? So
Yep, that's it.
it takes us both 6 months to knit a hat. That's what I'm gonna like get the wrong needles and I'm just gonna start like, oh, I think it looks like this, and then pull it apart 9,000 times. The other person's gonna research it, find patterns, whatever.
Yo, that's it
Not
exactly.
a quick start. It's just how I roll. It's how I go about doing what I do.
Yeah.
And also, I'm a visionary and not an implementer. So I will implement something once just to flex my smarty pants muscle, say I could do that, and then I never want to do it again. Like if now,
Exactly.
again, I want to design the next thing. I want to envision and design the next thing. So now I don't have to be ashamed or disappointed in myself for not being an implementer, because it's on the same continuum. And I'm a visionary. And the implementers need visionaries, and the visionaries need implementers. So it
Exactly.
helps you discover who your cognitive complement is, so that you can let go of not having to be who you're not and say, here's who I need on my team. So you can build
Yep.
it. Yeah.
Exactly.
Nope. Ah,
That's the biggest thing for a visionary, is to be able to build a team that supports the vision. And that's I've been fortunate throughout my life to be able to do that many times over. And that quick start piece, it's probably why I've sold 3 different companies and still don't run any of them. So it's
so
I
I guess the bottom
understand.
line is the structure and strategy needs to reflect you. I say how you do what you're doing and how you do it needs to be wrapped around who you are. Because when you do
Yes,
that, success and happiness will meet you there. So
absolutely.
think of it, this is you, then you got the glove. The glove going over you is what you're doing and how you're doing it. And the
Yeah,
structure strategy is as individual as you are. So,
absolutely. That's completely right there.
okay,
That sums it up nicely.
so let's move on to pillar 5.
To that final corner.
Final corner. Because like,
That
what
kind of
about what about what about
income and stability. Yeah, it's when you look at kind of the economic and practical foundations of life. I mean, we all have to earn a living, unless we're a Rockefeller or a Vanderbilt, in that amazing line of people. We have to work. We have to make money. We have to build a life. Now, do we have to go to the coal mine every day? No. If we have went through this process and we put the glove on in pillar 4, well, that career that you come up with and have grown into will provide not only the income but that stability. And that stability isn't just having a house and a roof and all that stuff, which is important, but it's emotional and it's mental and it's the people around you that feel that stability, feel that emotional stability, feel that energy from you that says, I'm going to be here. This is who I am. This is what I do. This is how I will be here for you. That's stability. That, yeah, income's important. That's why it's part of it. It doesn't just say pillar five stability. No, it's income and stability, because you got to make a living, and you got to support yourself. And but it's at the same time, that stability piece is ultimately what we're all striving for.
Right. And if you have moved successfully through the other pillars and or through square one and square two and square three with a coach, you'll recognize that you have severed, if you've done it successfully, you've severed your ego from your income. You've severed your identity from your income, right? You're not making, say, here's who I am. So then income becomes more about a means of,
Yep.
of living a life that feels true and right and aligned, instead of the goal that makes you feel important.
Yep, that's exactly it. So it's amazing how, like you said, you coach through it, and kind of that's your process in the squares, and and for me, the pillars and the 5 steps. But at the end of the day, it's still that continuum, of, if you don't truly think you're worthy, if you don't have that personal identity and dignity, to be able to get to step 5 and not have it crush you is very, very hard, almost impossible. Because yeah, you may make it, and you may build and do all these great things, but collapse is going to happen. Bad things are going to happen. And when you've done the work to build the foundation and something happens, it happens right here. If you haven't done the work to build the foundation and something happens, the whole thing collapses again, and you start all over. And ultimately, at the end of the day, I don't want anyone to have to start over. Personally, I've been as low as a person can go before they've had to start over. There's 2 times in my life that I ended up in long-term hospital stays, thanks to self-harm. And those situations, I pray anyone never has to experience. And um, they were a big driver for this as well. I want people to know that if they go through anything, that they don't have to do it alone. And, as long as there's kind of breath in me, they've got somebody to walk through it with. So, that's kind of, that's probably a little too heavy for where we were right now, but it's kind of what hit me pretty hard. So thank you for allowing me to share that. And,
So, okay, so we've talked about all your pillars. And so now what's beautiful about I know you wrote a whole book. We can't talk about the whole, I did review it and it's a lot. And thank you for, showing it. Great. We'll definitely put a link for your website so people can download that. Or get the paperback. So we've touched upon those pillars. The beauty of touching upon them is not only are we claiming that our listener, you are built for rebuilding, and that no matter what happens and whatever collapse happens, you can rebuild your life stronger than the life that broke. And now there's a way. There's actually 5 pillars. And so, Joe, what would be something really small that someone could just do right now if this is new information, they're understanding, maybe they want to, I don't know, just some way to start really small. What would you say?
Starting really small. I the first small step is to be brutally honest with yourself and ask yourself the question, what's happened? What's happened to me? What were my challenges? And then decide, do I want to stay here? Do I want to stay in this place, or do I want to make a decision to move to the person I'm supposed to be in a new position? And there, we didn't talk about it, and but there's also collapses of trauma and things in people's lives that that aren't you know for these kinds of podcasts. We're talking about worthwhile conversations, and but if you're in a marriage that is not the best, and your safety is in question, those hard questions in that situation, that brutally honest truth, is hard. Do you want to move forward? Do you want to you know change? And that's a hard question. I watched my mother stay in a marriage. That generation, they didn't make those changes. They didn't make those moves. And today you have the opportunity. And will it be easy? No, it won't. And that's the thing. I mean, we've been happy. We've been, we've talked about the book, and excited about what we've created in your process, and the squares. But the reality is that while there's so many great things that come from this, the the truth is, it's work. And that's the brutally honest question at the end of the rainbow: is, am I ready to do the work? And if you want to take one small step, it's getting brutally honest to that point. Am I ready to take that step? Am I ready to do the work? And if you are, you're not alone. You don't have to go through it alone. You can, you've got Linda, and her resources. You've got the Built for Rebuilding resources. There are literally tens of thousands of different therapists in the world that can work with you. There are, my way is not the only way. Linda's way is not the only way. We just happen to have the lived experience and the professional experience to put it together. So that's the small step. Are you ready to do it?
Are you ready to do it? Being brutally honest with yourself is hugely important. If you are ready to do it, that's beautiful. Move forward.
Absolutely.
Fine. If you're not ready to do it, now you have a new piece of information. That's why that question is so important. The true answer is, I'm not ready. That's okay. Know that that's okay.
Yes.
I have like a little quiz on my website. And it's called the little quiz for going big. And it's where are you on the island of playing it safe? And there are some people who are what I call island dwellers. And island dwellers are sitting in the middle of the island, they're out their campsite. They don't like being there, but they're like, I can't go into that jungle. I will get lost. So the fear of the unknown is too big. So they
Yeah.
stick with now, what I give to the island dwellers, because they're not even close to working with me, that's okay. What I give to them is what the path through the jungle looks like, so that you'll know when you're ready. How will you know when you're ready if you don't know what it takes? And that's what your 5 pillars have shared with us today. Here's what it takes. Here is the pathway, right?
Yeah.
So when you are ready, know there's a pathway. And you don't have to be going down it alone. There's people to help you down the path. So that's what's important about that. I also have some people who identify in my quiz as doc seekers. Those are the ones that are like, yeah, I got to get off this island. Yeah, I don't want to be on this island anymore. I'm smart, I'm capable. I have been watching and listening to podcasts. I've been reading good books, self-help books, and I can do this all by myself. They still don't have a pathway, but they're like, I'm good at I got my machete, I'm going through the jungle, I am going to find the dot. And so most people listening to this podcast are probably like that. And those people are like, I'm smart and capable, and I got this, I can do this. Now, there will come a point where the smart, capable people will get impatient and go, this is taking way too long. I have learned a lot, but now I just got to a point in the jungle where I'm not sure which way to go. Is there a pathway? Right. And yes, there is a pathway. And at that point, you can read Joe's book, or you can come to me for a pathfinding single session, right? There's things you can do and find, like, what are the pathways for those people who are helping themselves? And then there's the people who will, on my quiz, they will score as an adventurer. An adventurer says, I don't want to waste 5 years with my machete in the jungle to get to the dock. I want someone to take me down a path. I want to know the path, and I want to go down with somebody else, and I want to go fast, right?
Yes.
And that's where someone might want to work directly with you to go through these 5 pillars to rebuild their life, or someone goes through me, be able to shed what's not fitting and realign. So you can be anywhere and get something really good out of what we've shared today.
Yes.
And I want to conclude with something that's really important that we alluded to a little bit, but we haven't talked about yet, Joe. So I want to take a little bit of time to talk about SIDRE and about what it is, and maybe a little call to action.
Yeah. Well, when we talked about the two kind of trees of roots of my business life and my professional life, SIDRE is kind of the heart of everything I do. It's the driver, it's the passion. SIDRE works with justice impacted people, people who are re-entering society after incarceration. They've got a felony conviction in their record. They're trying to come back, and the system says, all right, you're free. Well, that is just a door. It really goes nowhere. Other than outside. Now they've got to find what we just talked about in those 5 pillars. If they aren't fortunate to be coming from one of the few states that do a little bit of reentry preparation and education, they're basically thrown out like a bird out of the nest. And the world is not good to somebody with a record. They have to figure out how to get a job, to get a house, to get all the things that you need to live. Okay, well, a lot of people come out, they don't even have identification. They don't have a driver's license, they don't have an ID card, don't know where their social security card is, don't know any of those things. So without those, how do you apply for a job? Well, if you do have it and you apply for the job, you get through it. Oh, background check, you're out. Housing, same thing. When you go to rent a house, background check, most people, you're kicked out. So there's, you've got to go through a process. And SIDRE is about not only the built for rebuilding process of the 5 pillars of building the identity and the stairway, but it's also about developing business skills. And it takes my other passion and other my skill set of running, building, developing businesses and teaching. I kind of joke in MBA in a box, where it's everything from the ideation process through planning, startup, launch, growth, maturity, and hopefully someday they get to exit. But it's about building something that is strong enough for them to provide their own income and stability. I mean, when you look at the pillars and you come back around, at the end of the day, we got to be able to take care of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And if you're justice impacted, people in this country like to say, you paid your debt to society and get a second chance. Well, yeah, okay. Problem is that when you pay your debt, the bill's never completely paid. It follows you the rest of your life. And depending on what the charges were and what, those background pieces, it can be even worse. And so, it's something that I experienced firsthand, and it's how that became kind of the heart of my mission. And I don't know if I did a good job of explaining it completely, but you know, basically, it comes down to, like I said, serving justice impacted people who are trying to re-enter society through business education and life. So,
Okay. And SIDRE, S-I-D, or sorry, C-I-D-R-E.
no, SIDRE.
S-I-D-R-E. Okay. Perfect.
Yes.
Okay. So SIDRE is a not-for-profit that you've created
Yes.
that guides justice impacted people through the Built for Rebuilding principles, also teaches them business principles and business startup skills so they can become self-sufficient.
Yes. That sounds wonderful right there.
It really
You nailed it.
great. Okay, well, Joe, thank you so much. This has been such a wonderful conversation.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Insightful, and I really appreciate you being a guest in Conversations with You Lyle. Okay, so now we've got a couple call to actions for people. So what should someone do if they've suffered a collapse?
Well, if they've suffered a collapse, get yourself, basically make sure you're safe. But then, you can come to the Built for Rebuilding website, which is built the number 4 rebuilding.com. And we actually have an online education, program that goes through the pillars and everything. It's a 90-day program, and a community that supports you, encourages you, and people that are going through their own rebuilding process. And then, that community allows you to protect that rebuild after you finish. So it's very, important that not only do you build the skills and the stability and the dignity and all the pieces, but then you don't let it go, because if you don't maintain, you can slide backwards pretty easy. And then, so that's collapse. Builtforrebuilding.com. They can get the book there. They can, order it. You can get it on Amazon. You can get it on, my website. There's lots of places. It's all, it's anywhere you can find a book, you can find Built for Rebuilding. And then SIDRE, if you've heard something in this that's resonated, that's touched you, and you've said, I'd like to help that program, because SIDRE costs nothing for the participants. It's absolutely free. Everything we do for the community is 100% free. If you'd like to help support that, you can go to SIDRE.us. That's SIDRE.us, and make a donation. It's every little bit helps. It's it's an undertaking of love, but it's still an expensive love. So
Right. Well, it's beautiful, and I'm going to definitely put both of those links in the show notes for our listeners. So
wonderful.
Great. Well, thank you. And that is our show. I'm Linda Bucher, guiding people to know their worth, to reconnect to their gifts, and create lives that are fully aligned and deeply impactful. And if you're sensing it's time to bring your life into deeper alignment, you can explore what that looks like at lindabucher.com. And if today's episode sparked something for you, please share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe so you don't miss what's next. And then join me next week for another expansive, uplifting conversation designed to support your growth. So until next time, make sure that you've made this conversation worth your while by fueling the spark that it ignited.